Hello, welcome to Do It Yourself with Wayne. Today we're going to show you how to replace your bathroom faucets. Now we did a video a while back about replacing the valves in our faucets because ours drip. It's a good video if you want to try replacing the valves in your faucet for a drip. Unfortunately, in our case, we found that our problem was more significant than just replacing the valves. The fixture itself had some corrosion in it, and that's what was causing our dripping. So today we're going to replace the faucet assembly. We chose these Delta faucets. I say these because we've got actually two sinks here. But we'll be installing this Delta faucet today. We're going to start out by talking about some of the tools that you may or may not need. Some of these tools you won't need. Kind of depends on your installation. Most faucets are fairly universal with how you install them, but there are some that are different. Some of these tools, like this one and this one, basically they perform about the same function. So we'll be talking some about that. So let's move on to talking about the tools you need. Now for your tools. To start with, in just about any installation of bathroom faucets, you're going to need a good adjustable wrench and a good pair of pliers. These two tools we will be using today, and in most cases you will need these. They don't have to look exactly like this, but something that will do this job. Tools that you may or may not need. This is a basin wrench. It's used for loosening and tightening the fittings underneath your faucet that you got to get to from underneath the side of the sink. That way it can reach up in there and tighten and loosen the fittings and stuff on the bottom of your faucet. This is also a basin wrench. It's made by Rigid. We recently did a video about using this tool because there's a lot of things this tool can do for you in this situation. It's also good for like kitchen faucets, bathroom faucets, bathtub and shower faucets. It's a little bit pricey. It's about $20. But if you're a handy person that you may be doing more faucets in the future, it could very well be worth the money to you. But if you've only got one to do, it's kind of hard to justify the cost. But it is a very good tool. Another thing is silicone or Teflon tape. Technically, I think it's just called pipe seal tape or something. Teflon company doesn't like you calling it Teflon tape anymore, whatever. But if you're replacing the water lines that come up to the bottom of your sink, you'll probably need Teflon tape. Now we won't be using this today because we're not replacing those water lines. You will need some silicone sealer. I would recommend that you buy some fresh that comes in a tube. Now this is not silicone, but it's this kind of tube. Buy the smallest tube you can find because you won't need much. In our case, we'll be using this because it's what I've got. But I don't recommend you go buy all this if you don't have it. But you will need some silicone sealer for doing your installation. And make sure you got an old towel handy. There will be times and there will be some water spillage. It may be a lot, it may be just a few drops. But make sure you got a towel handy that you don't mind getting a little bit dirty. All right, let's get started on replacing this faucet. To start your installation, get under your sink and turn your water off. Now you should have two water valves, one like this. They may look a little different, but you should have two. Go ahead and turn both of them off all the way, like that. Now up under the sink on up, this is the bottom side of the faucet assembly. Right here is where you want to loosen the pipe, the supply line that comes up to the bottom of your faucet. And after you do that, you want to take these gray nuts off. Yours may be a different color, they may look a little different, but you loosen those. And then you take this over here loose, and you should be able to lift your faucet up from the top. Now after loosening the parts that I showed you underneath, our plunger for the sink drain, that handle can come up and out. And your faucets, you may need to wiggle them some, but they'll just lift up. And there's your old faucets. Now next we'll need to clean all this real good. And we'll do that, and then we'll proceed to installing the new faucet fixture. And then after that, we'll get to the bottom of the sink and we'll do the drain. At this point, we're ready to install the faucet assembly into the top of the sink. We got this part that goes between there, and it acts as a seal so you don't get water seeping under this to go under your countertop, which if you get water seeping through there, it can cause even more problems. Now the manual says, or the instructions say, you can put silicone on this. And I always like to do that just as a little extra safety to ensure that you don't get water seeping under this. And as I said earlier, you can get the smaller tubes of silicone, but this is what I've got. So I'm gonna try and run some of this around here. And anytime you're messing with silicone like this, make sure you got some paper towels handy, because you're gonna get them, you're just gonna likely make a mess with it. I mean, unfortunately, that just is what tends to happen. All right. Now I don't need to put any of the silicone on the top of this thing, but I did anyway, just to give me a better seal there. Now, I'm gonna wipe some of this off my fingers. You get this, like I said, always make sure you got some paper towels handy. All right. Now I'm gonna go on the bottom side of that plastic seal, and I'm gonna go around here. And I'm gonna put a fairly liberal amount on there, just because I want a good seal. I want to make sure we don't get water under our sink, because if it starts happening and you don't know it, you can end up with your sink, your cabinets rotting out. And it's really easy to put a liberal amount of silicone on here when you're doing this, so you don't have to worry about that later. And the extra will squish out and you just wipe it off. So now we've got our little plastic piece in place there. We'll just stick it down on the sink here and mash it down. Then I'll get underneath and I'll put those little rings that secure it to the bottom of the sink that I showed you taking off earlier. It's really hard to get an image under there, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. This is a photo of the underneath side of the sink, and the gray ring that I'm pointing at is what I'm talking about, that you tighten those down to secure the faucet to your countertop. And you can also reuse the rigid tool to tighten those down, or you can just tighten them down by hand, but try to get them as snug as you can. Next, we want to take the drain stopper out, and what we're going to start with is this part right here has to come out, and this part is your P-trap, and this will be full of water. So just in case, make sure you got something under that. We got a pan under here. I'm going to loosen this first. Most of the time you can loosen that with your hands. This one is really tight, so I'm going to need my pliers. Like I said, most of the time you can loosen those just with your hand, because typically you don't tighten them with pliers. Just good and hand tight is all the tighter that you put them. Now this ring right up here has to be taken off, and I'll see if I can get that loose now. Now in our case, we're going to have to take the P-trap off so we can drop this down to get this part off. So I need to loosen this back here as well. See how tight it is. Yeah, it's real tight as well. And just an FYI, if you ever lose something down your kitchen sink drain or your bathroom sink drain, you take this part off and you'll likely find it right there. Some pretty smelly water too. All right, and now we can work on taking this thing off. Drop that off. Now we're ready to start installing our drain stopper in the bottom of our sink. But before we do that, I just wanted to take a couple minutes and tell you there's two different styles you're likely to come across. And fortunately for us today, the two that we have, the one we're taking out, the one we're putting in, are different. If you don't want to look at this particular part of the video, I've added chapters. You can skip to the chapter about installing the drain valve, and that will skip the description of what the two are like. But to start with, this is the new one that we'll be installing. To remove one like this, basically the bottom of your sink is right here. You just unscrew this part. You do have to take the P-trap tubing loose. Take that loose, you unscrew this, that, and your little rubber seal will drop down. This comes out the top, and that's all there is to it. On the old style, the style that we're taking out, if you remember a little earlier, I pulled this rod out from the back of the faucet. That's what you pull this up and down for opening and closing the plunger in the bottom of your sink to let, you know, to hold water, let water out. But it works with all this. You know, this goes in here, this part goes in here, and when you pull this up and down, I hope you can see that the little plunger goes up and down. But to take this out, you take all this loose, and that is taken loose by that one thumb screw that I showed you earlier in the video. This part here, this is a thumb screw kind of thing here. You just unscrew that, and this part will come straight out, and it's going to look pretty lousy like ours does, but that's what you do. Now the next thing you do, the bottom part of this tube, now keep in mind the bottom of your sink is right in this area. From here down is on the lower side underneath your sink. This part unscrews. You just take that off. At this point you can pull your plunger out the top, but you still got this part that's firmly connected into the bottom of your sink. You've got a nut here that you've got to unscrew, but what happens is over time with sediments and corrosion and stuff, that gets really tight. So when you try to turn that nut, the whole thing turns. The way you deal with that problem is up here in the top, put a screwdriver or something in this way, and there'll be holes in here for extra for your drain and stuff. Just lodge a screwdriver in here. You may need to get somebody to hold that from the top. Take your pliers and undo this nut from the bottom. Okay, got a bunch of threads here. That comes off the bottom. Got a washer, got a rubber gasket. Pull this rubber gasket off, and granted you're working under your sink, but this is what you got to do. Get that rubber gasket off of there, which is like that. And then from the top, you pull this part out of the sink. And that's how you take it apart. To put it back in, you just reverse all that. But anyway, that's the two different styles that you're likely to run across for the drain in the bottom of your sink. Now let's move on to installing our new valve, or drain line. Now we're ready to install the drain valve in the bottom of our sink. I'm going to start out by, now this is upside down, I'm going to put silicone caulk right around here. So when that goes down from the top side into the sink, that'll seal right around here to prevent leaks. And then I'll take, from the underneath side of the sink, I'll take this rubber seal, I'll put some silicone around here, I'll slide it up there, and then I'll put this on from underneath and screw it down until it's good and finger tight. And that's all it takes to install this. So let's do that. And I'm definitely putting more on here than I need, but we can always wipe off the excess. You just don't want to end up with spots where you don't have any. That's the worst part. I'll let the little pop-up thing come up so I got something to hold on to. And make sure the inside of your sink down in there, make sure it's good and clean. And we've already done that. And then just put that down in there and push it in place. Now, like I said, I'm going to take this, I'm going to put silicone around here, and then I'll get under my sink, push it up on there, and tighten it up with this. And now I'm going to do that. And this is where I'm really likely to get silicone on my fingers. But like I said, I tend to go a little heavy on the silicone because you can always wipe off the excess. But if you got an area where you don't have any, it's likely to leak. All right, now let's do that. Now we're underneath our sink, and we've already put this back in place to secure our rubber gasket with our silicone sealer up to the bottom of the sink, and we hand tighten it good. Now it's time to put our P-trap back in place. And basically it goes right here. But what you want to do first, make sure this is good and clean. Push that back up out of your way. Now this right here, there's a little tapered part of this plastic pipe that fits down in this part of your P-trap. Make sure that these parts are clean because we're reusing our old parts. You know, when you take them off, they're really cruddy. Make sure that you get that crud off, because if they're not good and clean, they may not seal well, and you may have trouble with leaks. And then this part will just come down, screw onto this, and that makes your connection there. Now for this part, make sure your right in here is good and clean. This is your old gasket that came off underneath, and this is the ring that tightens things down. Put your ring up there first, and then put your nylon gasket up there. And just push them up a little ways out of the way. Then you're ready to put your P-trap on. It goes on like this. Just start tightening putting your, well, that don't want to go on there. I'm not holding it quite right. There we go. Well, I thought. Okay, there we go. Push this one down so it comes in contact. Start screwing it down. Now what I want you to do is I want you to tighten these things down until they're kind of getting snug. Just kind of wiggle them around as you're tightening them up a little bit. Because when you tighten these up, you want them to be centered up good. And that's why you kind of wiggle it a little bit to make sure they settle into place. And then tighten them good, hand tight, just a little bit at a time. Like that. And that should be all you have to do to hook up the drain line to your new downspout for the faucet. Now we're ready to hook up our water lines. And that's where this tool can come in very handy for you. Now I said we're going to reuse our old water lines, but when we took them off, we found that the seals on them were in pretty lousy shape, so we bought new water lines. And when you hook this up, you can start screwing it in on the bottom of your sink where the water lines hook up. But it's hard to get up in there to snug them up. But with this tool, you can put it around the water line, go up there and snug it up. Makes it a lot easier. It's one of the good uses of this tool. So that's what I'm going to do now. I can reach this one here. I get up there, tighten it up what I can by hand. Take this tool, put it around the pipe. Do that. And just good and hand tight like that. Now if you don't have this tool, you can do the same thing. Just tighten it up and get you a wrench or a pair of pliers or something to, to snug it up at the top. Now the next thing we want to do is hook up our supply lines to our water valves, which is right here. I don't know how much you can see with my arm in the way. But basically, when you buy your water lines, if you have to buy new ones, get water supply lines that are longer than what you need. Because if you have just enough length, you can cause stresses that will cause a leak. It's better if you've got a little bit of a loop in your line. It took me a minute to get these hoses lined up perfectly straight so I could get them tightened up, and I used a wrench to tighten the nuts just a little bit, maybe 3/4 of a turn after I did finger tight, just to snug them up good. I turned my water valves on both sides. I run water at the top. I stopped up the drain to fill up the bowl some. I drain that, and then we check for leaks. And the best way to check for leaks is with a dry hand. Just wipe under stuff. If your hand stays dry, there's no water dripping. Check anywhere your water lines have a dip in them. Check under your under all your faucets, under your drain. And if your hand stays good and dry, you don't have any leaks, because that's the best way to find if you have a leak, is just feel around stuff. And if your hand comes out wet, just figure out where it's leaking and fix it. Now in our case, we do have a little bit of a leak right up here. I think I just need to loosen this up, put some more silicone sealer in there, and I think we'll be fine. But other than that, everything's working great. That completes our faucet installation. You can see we've got hot water and cold water and all that sort of thing. Our drain works, and no leaks at this point. I fixed that little bit of a leak we had underneath, and that's taken care of. So it's all good, all working, no leaks, no drips, no errors, all that sort of thing. So we'd appreciate it if you'd click like on our video if you find this helpful, and share it with your friends if it's appropriate. And if you want to find more of our videos, it's a lot easier to find them, DIY stuff, if you subscribe to our channel. And DIY with Wayne is all about teaching you to do things yourself to save you money. So if you're interested in saving money, subscribe to our channel. We'll help you with that. Thank you for visiting, and have a great day.